Okay. Welcome everyone to the Governance and Operations Committee meeting for Monday, November 27th, 2023. Just a reminder that members of the public can be present in the council committee room during the meeting. And also, please note that the webinar will be recorded and published to the city's YouTube site. Today we have a number of delegations on our list. The first one to present today is Deb Abma-Sluggett from Take a Hike Youth Mental Health Foundation. Is Deb online? Let's see her. Okay, we'll just give her a couple of minutes. Harry, your video is not on as well. Did you know that?
Nope.
Oh, there she comes. I just saw it. Hi, Deb. Hi, Deb. Can you hear us? We can see you.
Perfect. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I've already introduced you, so you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you. I'm really sorry that I'm not in front of a computer right now. I'm actually on the road. My name's Deb Abma-Sluggett, and I'm the Director of Philanthropy for Take a Hike. And so want to be able to thank you for this time to be able to spend a few minutes with you or answer any questions you may have in regards to our proposal. First, I also just want to say thank you to all of you that have been engaged with Take a Hike. We're thrilled to be located at KCLC and have been there for the last 10 years and have just celebrated our 10th anniversary in partnership with KCLC. We've been able to support hundreds of youth thanks to investment that community has made, not only for youth in Trail, but from surrounding communities as well. And so Take a Hike, for those of you who aren't familiar with, is a full-time mental health and well-being program that partners together with the school district to be able to provide this support for youth in grades 10, 11, and 12. And also thanks to community support, we've been able to work with younger youth and also share the supports of our mental health clinician, Chris Gibson, with other programs at KCLC through difficult times that youth may have had in the program. And so today I'm joining you from the road. I'm actually heading into another meeting to talk about our program, but it's also thanks to the success of the youth in the West Kootenay program that we're currently growing in the interior and recently have opened up in Merritt, in Vernon, and also in West Kelowna, and currently are working towards opening in Penticton as well. So the ask that we've put in front of community is for a $5,000 investment into the West Kootenay program, and it would go strictly to support youth that are part of the program in the Trail location. And so none of those dollars would be going anywhere else. Currently, we are at capacity in our program. We have 20 youth that are attending each and every day, which is an incredible opportunity for them to be able to get this support. And we're also working together with 15 other youth, a variety of alumni and younger youth as well. And so making sure that our mental health clinician, Chris Gibson, is able to support other youth that are attending KCLC. I think that Sandy has shared with you also the letter of support and the impact that Patrick Kinghorn, who is the principal at KCLC, and the difference that he sees. And then also other members of the city council were able to attend our 10-year celebration and hear directly, not only from one of our alumni, one of our current student, but also from one of our moms as well. And so it was incredible we had no idea that this alumni was actually going to share and speak about the impact of this, but she is now a member of the community and is managing a retail store today, and knew that we were making this presentation and just wanted to thank the city council for reviewing this proposal on our behalf.
Okay. Is that everything that you wanted to present at this time?
Absolutely. We're just really grateful for the impact. And if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to be able to take those questions as well.
Okay, I was just going to open it up to the floor to see if they had any questions for you. Is there any questions from council? Any comments?
I'll comment.
Councilor Hanson?
I just want to say this is such an outstanding program. I am familiar with it, and I think it's just great to give those kids the support in our communities that need that extra help with mental health and all of that. So I think this is a great program. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to echo Councillor Hanson's comments. I was one of the members of council that came to the open house along with Councillor Martin and Councillor Jones, and it wasn't what we expected. I thought it would be a meet and greet, and it turned into just a powerful circle of sharing and really seeing the impact of how this program has changed people's lives. So thank you for all the work that you do for the youth in our area.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I didn't join audio, so.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Deb, we've just a little bit of trouble with our audio here. We're trying to figure out where it is, what's happening.
No problem.
But thank you so much for your presentation today and taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And please keep up the great work. We couldn't do what we do on behalf of community if it wasn't for folks like you. And so we're really grateful for the time that you spend and the support that you provide in so many ways. And so thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Good luck in your next meeting.
Bye-bye.
So was it me? Oh, was it me? Sorry.
You have to have both up.
Oh, yeah.
I'll join now. I didn't want to join in progress.
It gives you the option. Video. And then it's going to be, and then just close the box. You're thinking of the audio.
It's good to go with
Continue
that.
the- Yeah.
You have an extra stipend for IT.
I did.
When's the class on computers? Over at Beth's house.
I'm teaching one tomorrow.
Oh, no.
Sorry. The advanced class.
You're not tried audio, so you don't need to.
You need
Your
security?
computer. You might, and your computer.
Yeah.
She joined me there. Oh, somebody. We work for nobody's.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so our second delegation for this afternoon is from the Trail and District Arts Council. We have, and Vizet Gallery, we have Nadine Tremblay, Joanne Argue, and Sharon Robert. And I'll let you guys go ahead with your presentation.
Oh, sorry. So thank you for appearing us today. We really appreciate the invitation. We would like to start with just this quote that is not up on your board. We're going to do the back. Yeah. Okay. Which is that the artist's world is limitless. It can be found anywhere, far from where he lives or a few feet away, always on his doorstep. That's Paul Strand. And this photograph is actually from an exhibition that was at the Vizet Gallery in 2014. And it is a picture of trail, and it just talks about how art is everywhere. We just have to look for it. And I will just introduce myself. I'm Joanne Argue, and I'm the new executive director.
I'm Sharon Roberts. I'm the executive director at BISAC. And I'm Nadine Tremblay. I'm the artistic director at the Trail District Arts and the Bailey.
We just wanted to give some stats on the art to give you a base. And there are about 160,000 people employed in the arts in BC, and the arts generate $8.6 billion in cultural GDP for the province alone. And for every dollar that gets spent in the arts, $1.36 is generated back in revenue. So it's not that it's a big money maker, but it is very significant. And for as far as the basin goes, there are roughly 900 people who work in the arts in the basin, and about 2/3 of those are women. And 8 out of 10 of those are self-employed, which means that art is their main source of income. They may have other sources, but art is the main source. But as you can see here, the median income for artists is $25,600, and the median income from all other workers in the basin is $48,000. So a significant difference in income for artists versus women. This is from the BC government's website, says that the arts and culture sector is a key economic driver, which contributes to local economies, builds strong and vibrant communities, and creates civic engagement and provincial pride. And you can certainly see how the arts impact Trail itself is underground everywhere. And the United Nations has also come out and said that the creative economy is one of the fastest growing in the world in terms of job creation, economic income, and exporting as well. So the creative economy is really becoming important.
Okay, just a little bit of research that we did. So while the City of Trail does support arts-related events, Solar City Days, Spectacular, I know you guys all know this, and provide space and staffing for the museum and the library, but the primary arts and programming, the general arts and programming in Trail is a little lacking as far as city support. Community support and demand for the arts has increased exponentially in the past decade. So we're going to show you some stats in a second about what that looks like. But contributions from the city has remained the same since 2015. And then there's some information about arts and culture sector on the city's website, but it's a bit hard to find. And we would love to see a little bit more arts and culture under live and play on the drop-down menu. The city's recreation guide did not include too much arts-related activities. So this is not a criticism of the city because we haven't actually been reporting to you regularly or like providing, some stats or asking for much, but this is just to say that I think we can do better together and that there's room for improvement. So here's what the stats look like. Here's what the stats look like for the Bailey Theatre. So I wrote a business plan in 2015, and the Bailey Theatre is the biggest venue for 300 kilometers. So what that means is that when an act plays Vancouver or Calgary, they need a stop in between. And Trail is that stop. And it's because of this business plan. So people like the Bare Naked Ladies and Bryan Adams and the big name acts, they come to the Bailey, they have 700 seats, we're the biggest venue, and the logical stop in between. And this didn't really happen prior to the business plan. And then here's the stats on the number of tickets. So we in 2013, I wrote a business plan. We started implementing it. By 2016, the Trail Arts Council took over the operations of the Bailey Theatre from the regional district at the time. They were doing off the side of their desk. And then things started to climb and climb and climb. I was hoping for a little bit of homeostasis, but of course that big drop there is COVID, And then I'm happy to say that now we're at 2022, we're kind of back up to pre-COVID numbers. And things are still growing. A little bit about Trail Arts Council. I'm working too confused. Let me just tell you a little bit about what we do. So to give you some context. So we run the Bailey Theatre. It's a 720-seat venue. We do over 70 rentals here, community and commercial rentals. And then we have this small space called the Griff, which is 100 seats. We do about 30 events in there a year. We have all kinds of programming that we present. So like these big name acts, they come to town, they rent the theater. That's not us, but it exists because of us, because we wouldn't come if we didn't sort of put ourselves on the map. But we do the Tech Family series, we do the Jazz series, Performing Arts Trail series, On Stage Classical series, and more. We run the bar and concession, the box office, and we own the downtown electronic message board over at the arena. We present music in the park, which attracts about 600 people in once a week to Trail in Gyro Park. And then we do the 2 night markets in conjunction with Incredible Trail. We program a film series at the Royal, which is 20 or more shows a year of independent Canadian films. A little bit more fringy films that you wouldn't normally get at your local movie theater. They're all TIFF films, Toronto International Film Fest. We have school performances. We do workshops and pro-D for local dance schools and the public school system. We distribute $22,000 in funding annually to approximately 12 arts organizations annually. So these are what we call our affiliates. They're arts and culture organizations that are in Greater Trail, not just Trail. And we give them small grants, programming grants and project grants to do what they do. So it's sort of help bolster the arts in general. We adjudicate $5,000 in grants for the Columbia Basin Trust every year through Columbia Kootenay Cultural Alliance. We distribute 2,000 professional development arts grants to adults every year and 1,000 to youth every year. We produce Triple Threat, which is a 3-week summer musical theater program for kids 8 to 18. We do youth engagement projects. The last big one was the All Ages Drag Show, which was the best community engagement project in like provincial history, but I'll go into that later. We participate in city events like Pride, Truth and Reconciliation, Silver City Days. We have partners. We do all kinds of matching and marketing with Tourism South Kootenay, local restaurants, local hotels, Selkirk College, the Royal Theatre, Trail Action Network, and more. We have 7 staff. We have 7 core staff. We have 14 event staff, and we have over 25 volunteers. Last year, we completed a $1.2 million upgrade to the Bailey Theatre for our rigging electrical system, a project that was managed by us and that we got all the money from, that we raised all the grant money for.
Thanks, Nadine. Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon. I'm the director at VISAC. In case you don't know, our name VISAC stands for Visual Arts Center, and our longer legal name includes the Greater Trail area. So we're the only visual arts center providing programming for the Greater Trail area, Rossland, Trail, Montrose, Beaver Valley, and Fruitvale. We provide excellent and accessible visual arts programming for all age groups, so all the way from preschool up to seniors. And our programs are priced to allow all families to participate. At the moment, we have a specific focus on expanding our youth programming. We've been able to hire a second half-time employee. So we employ 3-ish people, myself at half-time, and we added a programming manager this year who is also an artist. So we've provided living wage employment to another artist in the area this year, which is pretty huge and exciting for us. We also support emerging and established artists in the West Kootenays. So we help artists to begin and progress their careers by providing exhibition space. We also support artists to bring their art to market. And we just sort of provide, the ability for them to advance their careers. And sometimes we're the first gallery where artists show their work. That's really important because when they're applying to bigger shows, they submit a CV. And so they have an exhibition they can include on that because of their work with us. We also maintain a professional standard pottery studio. I don't know if this is really common knowledge, but in the basement in Selkirk, we have this amazing pottery studio with over 65 members. To my knowledge, it's the only facility of its kind in the Kootenays that serves emerging artists. So, of course, there's Kootenay School of the Arts in Nelson, but that's not open to the public. So what we have there is really special in allowing people to have this kind of access. And through that studio, we offer pottery classes for all age groups. And there's a real demand for this type of programming. Our classes are filling up into April of next year already, and we cannot keep up with that demand currently. We also partner with other community organizations to provide arts programming. An example of this is Tech. We paired their wellness program for pottery. I think they've had 5 or 6 groups come through this fall alone. We've also had early childhood educators, and the library came last year as well. So, we also partner with the library for some visual arts programming. And lastly, I'll just mention we maintain a working lapidary studio. Lapidaries rock and gem polishing. So any beautiful jewelry that you have with a nice polished rock, we teach classes. And again, we cannot keep up with the demand. We always have wait lists for those. So.
Nobody wrote it down, so they must all know that.
So why support the arts and trail? All for all the stuff that we just said, but we want to relate that a little bit to stories of real people in the community. So the story I have to share is about an art student that goes to JL Crow. She wants to go to art school. She wants to go to Sheridan, which is like the best art school in the country. But she is worried that she doesn't have access to the right visual arts programming in this community to develop a portfolio that will allow her to get into that kind of post-secondary institution. So that is part of the gap that we're trying to fill in arts programming for our community.
And we get emails like this all the time, but I thought I'd share it with you because it came recently from Lana Rodley. And she just said, I just want to say what an amazing time we had. Great, really great show. Also really love the Dean Brody show. You've done an amazing job bringing in so many great artists, and the people around here must be enjoying them as last night was certainly a full house, as are many shows. We noted as we drove down that there was barely a parking place to be had in the whole town. People were eating, shopping, drinking before the show, certainly a boon to local restaurants and bars. So thank you for this. Dan pointed out that we hardly knew anyone in the audience, and we used to know everybody in town. This, he figured, is because they don't have a Bailey equivalent in Nelson or Castlegar, so people are coming to trail for these shows. The only downside is I wish that we had an everything pass. Maybe you can come up with a year pass for your favorite festivals. Nice try. Presenter of the year. So I won presenter of the year this year, which I just want to point out, it's a provincial award. I know you guys with Communities in Bloom, and that's an international award, but I'm working on it. Presenter of the year is the presenter of the year is a provincial award that you're nominated by your peers. So theaters all over the province, agents, managers, promoters, everyone in the arts vote on this, and they decided that I am doing it best. So it looks really good, and it means like they're having a really good time, and there's great art being done everywhere, but our town is being recognized for that, which is
Really cool.
nice.
Yeah. Oh, and as part of that, we have such broad community support here, not only for Jeff making, one of our biggest supporters is also Trail's largest supporter, which is CAP. And they've invested more than $12,000 just in the last year and TDEC, and more than $5,000 in support of the arts. And they do actually have 2 employees who are dedicated to community relations and engagement, who will reach out to us and ask us what we need and what they can support. So they're really keen on the arts.
Okay, and finally, this is just a snapshot, so I'm not going to go over it in detail, but this is like a comparison of community arts funding from other communities. Some of it's grant and aid, some of it is fee for service, some of it is just operational support that other communities get. But you can see that somewhere like, I don't know what's going on with computers, buffering, you can see that, communities like a community like Nelson, which is slightly larger than Trail, has 11 cultural policy documents. And then they have all kinds of funding from their museum to even just $60,000 a year for cultural development and an ambassador, that alone. And then there's towns that's smaller than Trail, like Golden, who are giving the Arts Council $180,000 a year to operate under a fee-for-service model to run their gallery.
How much is that one? 180?
180. 180 for Golden. And then Nelson has upwards of 350,000 collectively. But all the stats are there just to give you a snapshot of where communities are. And then just go to the last slide. Oh, yeah, it might have picked you already. Should I just keep going? Sure, okay. Okay, so that brings us to our calls to action. Haha. The moment we've all been waiting for. You can't see it, but we'll bring it up in just a moment.
Do you want me to wait till it's up or?
It's nice for we join this meeting.
Okay, so when we were preparing for this meeting and thinking collectively about some steps and where we wanted to go for arts programming in the community, we came up with 2 short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term goal. So this year, our grant request, TDAC submitted their grant and aid application for $25,000, and I'd like to amend VISAC's grant and aid request that we submitted back in July, I think, and raise that amount up to $10,000. And that's to work towards our, I think, 3rd medium-term goal. And Nadine will also add a little bit about percentage, those amounts as percentage of total operating budget at the end of the slide.
So another short-term goal is to ask City Council for a city councilor as a representative on each of our boards, BISAC and TDAC. We think it would be great to have a city person there to keep us accountable and keep up to date on what is going on in the arts and culture community.
Our medium-term goal or call for action actually is a request to move from grant and aid to a line item for arts funding. We think that would be a little more stable for us as arts organizations and give you some stability and some accountability from us as well. And finally, our long-term goal is the creation of a cultural development action plan, which we would like to work with you on to develop a program for the trail that just enhances even more the arts that are happening.
And just a note that our requests collectively will make up, individually makes up the 25,000 for Arts Council makes up 3% of our operating budget, and it makes the 10,000 makes up 8% of VISAC's operational budget. And that from using the City of Trails 2022 expenses, it makes up 0.001% of the city's overall budget. So just to say that a little bit could make a huge impact for our organization. And that is it. We'd love to do an interpretive dance.
For a fee?
Awesome, thanks you guys. Council, any questions or comments for?
Great to learn.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Great presentation.
Yeah.
I love seeing that marquee that up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love your marquee.
The sign,
I
yeah.
never tired of looking at it. I always want to stop and get a video in front of it. I'm worried about it. Keep going. I have posted a couple.
You're not on TikTok yet, obviously.
No, I did that up to my,
Councilor Benson had a comment?
Just a question for Joanne, now that you've been in trail and in your position for a couple months now, how's it going, and what are you seeing?
It's going really well. So I came from a bigger city, and I would say that where I came from, there is less of the arts going on than what is happening in trail. And that was really exciting for me when I moved here to find out there was so much available in such a small area. So yeah, so I'm thrilled to be a part of it all and to work with Nadine, who has been doing amazing things in these last few years. I can be presenting to you.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to your graph where it started in 2015 and went up and down. And I think we have to recognize the amazing work that you guys have done for our community and continue to do. You've made such a difference in our downtown area and for people that just, want something to do, want to get involved in the community and be a part of it. And you've done that for them. So I think it's amazing. All ages can, access your building and go in the programs, and the different programs that you bring in relate to our community on every level. So I just think it's really good work that you're doing, and just thanks for picking Trail to be a part of and to do that with.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you.
That's a lot of work.
Thank you.
I didn't have to, I wonder if you're driving something.
I think it's like, yeah.
Bobby, where you
Well,
are?
how are you? Know your faces?
Thank you.
God, then it fell.
You're welcome. I don't think I.
Oh, that's no one's,
Okay, welcome everyone. We have another delegation to present this afternoon, and we have Generation to Generation Society Sanctuary. And welcome. I only have Barb Gibson sitting down here.
I'm Brenda McGurran, the
Okay.
chair,
Thank you.
and Barbara Gibson and Cassidy Smith is our children's program director. So,
Well, thank you for being here today.
well, thank you for the opportunity to present. Many of you we saw at our 25th anniversary open house just last month. It was great to see you there and be able to show things off a bit. Thinking back 25 years ago, I don't think that we thought we would still be here when we started then on a shoestring budget, and of course we're still on that shoestring budget. But that's we had last summer we were at the farmers market selling our 50/50 tickets, and we spoke to one young lady with her family and said, "What do you know about Sanctuary?" And she said, "Oh, I grew up at Sanctuary. It made such a difference in my life." And so just I'm thinking about you folks sitting in your chairs here thinking, you must feel it. That's a real feather in your cap to have supported a program like this over that many years. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to talk a little bit about finances, and then Cassidy, who we really want to talk to about some stories about the things that she sees with the kids. So Barbara.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to briefly highlight two things. We've got a copy of our September financial statements year to date. There's just two things that I'd like you to notice on the comparative income statement. Is that included, of course, in our revenue is over $16,000 in building grants. So of course, there won't be an expense for that here because it'll go directly against the asset, the cost of building. And there's also a large amount for the United Way, but that includes from January to June 2024. So at the end of the year, that'll be scooped out whatever we haven't spent at that time. So that'll probably bring us, as far as real income towards Sanctuary, it'll bring us down to about $175,000 in income that we can use for this year, which leaves us with net income of just under $12,000 at this point in time. And if you would care to notice, there's a bunch of stuff, SO, and that's our Schools Out program. Okay, that's the expenses for the Schools Out program, except for the coordinator wages, and a portion of that is also against. There are wages applicable to the Schools Out program as well. I just haven't broken them down. But I'd be happy to answer any questions once you've had a chance to actually look through them. Sandy can tell you how to get a hold of me. So if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But now I want to turn it over to Cassidy, who is our program director for Schools Out and the program in general. She's the one who deals with the kids every day Yeah, she's a brave girl.
So I started with Sanctuary a year ago now. I was in the social service worker program for Selkirk, and I had my first practicum there in the winter, and I had my second practicum there in the summer. And then I got hired on, and I could not have been more grateful. At Sanctuary's heart is in providing a safe space for preteens. We hear it from our others, and we feel it for ourselves that Sanctuary feels like home. We sit together for meals, and we talk about our days, the highs, the lows, and the middle. The children are free to be themselves, to have fun, to try new activities, hobbies, food, and to make connections and to grow. We also provide the children with opportunities to learn necessary life skills, such as cooking, baking, financial learning, community involvement, social emotional learning, and others. I hear of amazing feedback from parents about how their child has come home and made a meal for the whole family, and how they love to experiment, and how their confidence has grown in the kitchen. We have a point system to teach financial learning and the value of earning money. There are a list of ways that children can earn points, including finishing homework, helping with chores around Sanctuary, doing creative activities, writing a short story, etc. And after accumulating these points, they can shop at the point shelf, and that is filled with various toys, art supplies, and other fun things that they could buy. So it teaches them how earning money can gain privileges and all of that. At Sanctuary, we really emphasize the value of the skills of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills, such as communication, self-management, resilience, and emotional intelligence, by talking about them and exploring the variations of feelings and how to find the best coping mechanisms that work for every individual. There are children who attend Sanctuary with diagnosed ADHD and autism, and their parents take great comfort in knowing that we're able to provide their children with space to feel safe and to feel understood. These tools and the conversations we have help not only us staff to understand them and their needs better, but for them to find out how to understand themselves and their needs, and how to use their voice to get what they need for themselves. I have personally witnessed immense positive growth in the children at Sanctuary because of these practices, these conversations, and these tools that we provide. We not only positive growth in themselves, but as a unit. There are many flourishing friendships that come from Sanctuary, as there are 3 schools that participate in bringing their kids in at Sanctuary. A big part of the skills we teach is community involvement, as I mentioned previously. And at Sanctuary, we show the kids the importance of community and how we contribute to our community starts by getting into it. And in the spring and summer, we regularly pick up garbage around town, we sweep storefronts, and we have in the last year, we have made community care kits to give to the displaced people in our community. When we put them together, it allows us at Sanctuary to have open conversations about the issue of homelessness in our community. And some children are scared, some are worried, some are hopeless and helpless, and some have parents who are living on the street. To be able to talk about it openly helps us to ease the worry and gain understanding and compassion. It also breaks the stigma around homelessness. The last time we brought out these community care kits was the other week, and I tell the kids, like, we're just going to drop them off. We don't need to approach anyone. And then we had one girl who was feeling very proud and confident. And she's like, I see someone over there. I see them quite often. I would love to give it to them directly. And I said, of course, whatever makes you feel comfortable. I'm right beside you every step of the way. So she hands the bag over to the person. And she's like, this is from Sanctuary. We were just hoping to brighten up your day. And he actually told us that he also went to Sanctuary as a kid and has felt so much gratitude towards Sanctuary. And it was really nice to have that full circle moment and at that time. Even though we at Sanctuary, we teach the kids life skills and provide them with safety and comfort within our walls, the children provide us with so much more that they don't even know. They provide us hope, openness, acceptance, authenticity, new ideas, laughter, gratitude, and all of the love. And I don't know what the community would do without a place like Sanctuary. That's all I have to share.
Great, open to questions.
I just have a question. I'm looking at page 2 here of your program supervisor's report. Paragraph 2, bullet point 2. It says the provincial government funds us at a rate of $1.40 a day. I know, I had to reread that more than once. $1.40 a day for children who stay less than 4 hours and $2.40 a day for children who stay more than 4. I'm just wondering if you can give me some background as to the justification or the rationale for those numbers.
State government legislation. So that is our contract, that is everyone's contract with the Ministry of Family,
How long has it been like that?
ever since we started.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it hasn't increased.
It has not increased at all.
Is there a lobby effort or advocacy effort on your part to try and?
We don't have time right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm just looking at these numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's not a lot. It adds, it's been averaging between around $550 a month. Except of course, we're closed in July for 2 weeks for vacation and 2 weeks in December, so that brings the amount down, but it's about $6,000 a year.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
So that's just not because of the population in the greater trail area, that's province-wide?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council?
I really enjoyed the open house.
Oh,
And it was a great eye-opener for me to see inside your facility, and I love you.
Thank you, thank you. We just feel that that's the age that you can really impact children. You know, they're looking for role models. They're looking to bring adults into their circle other than because they know them. But yeah, it's a really good age. You can really impact them. If you can get them at 7 or 8 years old and keep them like we do until they're 13, you know, we reinforce year after year how to deal with conflict, what conflict resolution looks like, all of that sort of thing. So we can really make a huge impact. A lot of our parents are single working. And so they don't have a lot of time to spend with their children once they get off work, especially as they're not getting off at 2:30 when the bus pulls up. They're getting off at 6 o'clock. We don't know. But at least they know that the children are looked after. They're going to have a hot meal. They're going to have a snack after school. And that also provides a huge financial relief for the families because they're not having to make dinner for those children. So, yeah, we rely on donations.
Right. Councillor Martin.
Just want to make sure that you know that we're still using the keychains that we got.
Yeah, it's a big brilliant.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming today and the work that you do in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to come to Sanctuary anytime.
Hey,
You're feeling brave.
I told Mr. Wilson, if you guys have a gym night and talk to me, I'm in.
Hey, guys. Every Thursday.
Okay.
Well, this Thursday. Yeah, this after business, fine.
Was that this one? All the way to Boston?
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so our next delegation for council is from the Trail Curling Association. We have Penny Fennell and June McKenzie here.
So you've all read our application to grant and aid. I provided Colin with a lot of data, historical data for our curling association. And once COVID hit, we lost a lot of members. Our retirees club is our biggest club, and of course, a lot of them passed on or moved away or whatever, and a lot were unsure about coming back with groups of people. And we have applied for other grants and somehow the direct access grants, they don't seem to like our constitution, which we've redone. And they still don't like it, so I think we're gonna look at sending it off to Curl BC because they worked with us to get it. Somehow they think our directors aren't elected from the membership, but they are. And so we are working on that. So we had 3 grants we applied for and they were declined. The direct access was a big one and it was declined because of the Constitution. During COVID, we did get $7,500 from VS Sport for assistance, and we don't qualify for a lot of the provincial grants during COVID because our 2 employees are on a contract basis, so they don't pay provincial sales tax. And so we weren't eligible for a lot of that, and a lot of the grant money out there is for capital projects, and we don't own the building, so that's not an option, although we have done work with help with the city for different things, renovations in the curling rink that mostly only benefit us, they don't benefit the city. Our membership has gone up this year and it's been good, and now everything is back to normal. And the year before, we should have asked for forgiveness of 1 month's payment, which is now causing us to ask for 2. And then I revised our budget and we're hoping that our lease can remain the same as last year. And with the amount we've asked for the grant aid, we're hoping to break even for the upcoming season. And we are going to still continue to apply for grants, but we need an outside source to revisit our constitution because somehow the direct access grants for gaming, I don't know whether they've got us red marked or what it is, but a lot of curling clubs in the province do get funding from them and some of the local ones. And I think I put it in the application that we were competing with Beaver Valley and Rossland, which are all volunteer. And we have lost curlers to those groups because it's a little cheaper to curl there. And when I redid the budget, this year we did increase our ice rental to the leagues, of which roughly half of that should go towards paying the manager / ice technician who is retiring at the end of this year. So we're going to be looking for a new one. And I removed any training overlap out of this year's budget just so that we can get back on the straight and narrow again. So we're just hoping that you'll all approve what we've asked for. And do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Does council have any questions?
Do you guys rent out the curling for private events?
Yep.
Right. And has that gone up or since COVID? Have you guys advertised for that?
COVID, that's gone
I'm
down.
asking because I didn't even know if you could.
Yeah. So we have a couple of events. So the bocce tournament that is excluded from our lease.
Okay.
That's strictly between the city and the Columba Lodge. However, we run the bar because they don't want to have to get their own license and supply bartenders and all that other stuff. So we do well from that event. And of course, they didn't have it for a couple of years. We used to have the Bridge Club used to have a tournament in the curling rink every July. And one night we would have the bar open for that, but we would get rental on the facility. We've had birthdays, anniversaries, all kinds of other functions. But the Bridge Club now during COVID, they found out they could make just as much money doing it online as opposed to hauling all their people's insurance into there and doing all that extra work. So we have lost that since COVID, but we do advertise. We usually periodically put an ad in the paper and the rates are reasonable and our bar rates are very reasonable. Anyone that comes in from out of town or anywhere else, they say, "Oh, we love your bar prices." And we do make profit from the bar. Our bar revenues over the past years when the penalties became greater and people quit drinking as much. They were cut in half basically. Because it used to be our bar revenue was enough to pay the ice maker, and those days are gone. But we lost a lot of curlers when the residency rule came up, because someone on our board told everybody that they'd have to pay extra, which it ended up, because we leased the facility, they didn't. We've been trying to recoup the curlers. Our ice rentals have gone up. The sheets, individual sheets we rented have gone up this year, so we have increased our membership base. A lot of our members curl in 2-3 different leagues, and each of the leagues does their own fundraising to help out, to assist with their costs. And we have a membership fee that we levy everybody that uses the facility. Pay for toilet paper, paper towels, all that. And then we have to affiliate our members with Curl BC, and that's $20 a head. And the only ones we don't have to pay for are the juniors under 12 years old. So, and our rates for renting a facility, they're reasonable, and just usually only people that have been in the facility, because a lot of people don't know what it looks like. But we host a lot of events in there, and the bocce event is a whole different group of people, different age group, and it's a wonderful event.
Councillor
It's a
Campbell.
question on youth. Do you have initiatives targeting youth? And what are your youth numbers? What does that look like?
They have gone down, but then they went up. Castlegar used to have a huge youth program, which they're getting back to, starting up again. And during COVID, we were the only curling rink in the area that had a junior program. We had to change our juniors curling date though, because our retirees didn't want to be in the building with all these unvaccinated children. Anyway, yeah, that worked out, and they've gone from 2 days a week to 1 day a week, and then they have a buddy day, and then their membership doubles. And this year, there's about 16 kids. They come right after school, and there's instruction provided, and then they have games, and they have a Christmas party, and then they have a Bonspiel in February, which all that didn't happen during COVID, but they are hoping to get it going again this year. Castlegar has a good group of people now that are willing to start up their program, and if you get, and I think you all know the Nelson Curling Rink is closed this year. They have to raise money for a new compressor or whatever to make their ice. And so Castlegar has picked up the slack from the Nelson people that are diehard curlers and want to be competitive and whatever. And our Super League that's sponsored by Kootenai Savings, it has curlers coming from Grand Forks, Nelson, Castlegar. We're the only facility that's big enough to have extra ice to provide for them, because the other 2 curling rinks only have 4 sheets of ice, Beaver Valley and Rossland, and they're pretty much full. Whereas we do have the extra ice, and ours, we think it's a little bit better ice. We like to think it is. We didn't budget this year either for the product that we put in to clear the impurities out of the water, because we had switched suppliers. We went to Columbia Filter, and it ended up being what they had quoted us. And we may have a different solution. They've revamped something, and so I removed that from the budget that I had originally provided, and we're hoping not to go that route. Somebody in Castlegar has given us a formula how to make it yourself, and we bought the tanks from Columbia Filter, so we're looking at doing that. And we have had fundraising. We usually try to host a large event every 2 years. And unfortunately, during COVID, we had 2 events, of which the first one, we couldn't have any spectators. We had a curling tour here sponsored by the Torchlight Brewery in Nelson. And then we had the big BC Club Championship at the end of the season, and that was a great event. And spectators were minimal. People still weren't ready to be out in crowds. And I'm sure all of you have been in the curling rink and you know it's not a great area of space. And we're one of the few curling rinks that is hampered by not having a lower viewing level and an upper one, and because the ceiling's too low. But the city with Rossland in 2026 is hosting the BC Winter Games again, and we hope we're still all there able to volunteer and participate and whatever goes with that.
I was going to mention the BC Winter Games. You guys are already on top of it. So did you say the membership was up?
Yeah, the retirees went up one sheet of ice, so that would be probably 10 more curlers. The Super League went up a sheet, so that would be 8 more. And the ladies went up a team, but they have a bye team because they couldn't even it out, otherwise that would have been. But what happens with the retirees, they have a lot of guys that travel after Christmas, go to Arizona, whatever. And then we have a formula for an individual rate for the rest of the year, whatever. So we usually get another half a sheet out of them in January, and they have additional members that sign up after Christmas. And
okay, Councillor Benson.
So retirees, ladies and gents, what's the super sheet? Sorry.
okay, the Super League is a league that was formed by people that wanted to have a little better quality of curling, the people that like to go to competitions.
Okay.
Compete provincially, go down to town Bondsfield, whatever, and they're sponsored by Kootenay Savings Credit Union.
Okay. Any other questions before we go? Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks,
Thank you.
I did bring lots of paper, but I've given so much paper to call it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we got it all, I think.
All the penny spreadsheets.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, you ready to go? Okay, item number 2 is grants and aid sponsorships. And the report on the grants to the organizations dated are before you in the package. And the recommendation is that this report be received for information. Theo McClure, do you have anything to add to it?
Well, I think that there's more than it's information. We need to make some decisions, I think, is some, I think that looking at the report, you can see that we haven't had as much, in rental requests. So, you know, I kind of, figure it is similar budget, the same budget numbers for those two. I also was curious, but again, once we dove into where we're at today, that there's a number of items that are from previous grants that were provided that kind of hit. I don't know if you would have seen that in the detail of where we're at for the balance. For example, the Selkirk College nursing students was one. The tennis courts was the tennis courts. So there's a few things that's I guess when I looked at it, I was a bit surprised that either just the timing of when those landed. So again, that kind of eats into this year's budget a bit, but those are just some of those things.
Okay.
Councilor Butler.
I'm just a question on the rental waiver. Is that a true budget item, or is that just simply a waiving of fees, as in the sense that it's not actual money we're putting out, correct?
In one sense, Councilor Butler, that would be correct, except that we do charge the account and then put the revenue back to where it is now. It is to ourselves, right? I mean, that's one way of looking at it, but it is to make the recreation whole in the sense that they're working with those individuals. We allocate them those revenues from that budget. So it is between budget, but it's not the same as the dollar actually leaving the building. So that's kind of what you're asking, like when we kind of check.
Or even collected in that sense.
True, in the sense, but it is kind of an internal charge to make sure that we are recognizing that the rent the recreation department is being accounted for, even if it's, it's in weighting it. That's council's direction because we've got a part of a budget for it. But to keep that particular part of our operations whole, in the sense that they can say, yes, but we had these programs, and because we didn't, there would be a bit of it could be like, why is it down, or why are getting as much money? It's like, well, we might have waived this one or waived that one. So I think that's just been a past practice.
Yeah, because what we're like, our true cash grant budget is 32,000, and we're being asked for nearly 55,000 we have.
That would be correct. Yes. Yes.
So
yeah.
So in actuality, like, I understand where you're coming from by adding them together, but really, truly, that's not.
But you are correct. Like one would
how we should really drain these budgets.
Fair. I guess I looked at it more on the fact that you're giving up revenue by giving a waiver, right? Mm-hmm. So there is sort of a cash component that we didn't get that cash coming in. So I guess I looked at it that way. But you are correct that the budget usually is, as you noted, an actual check that goes out the building physically to somebody else. But there is also that loss of revenue. That's why we're budgeting for it in the way that we do, is to kind of recognize that it is a cost to the city, whether or not one says that yes, there's a cost that's cash leaving, or that there's cash that's not coming in. So I kind of looked at it that way as far as a budget amount.
Okay. Yeah. And then this is maybe a question for Mayor Jones or Jimmy. How in the past have we typically handled the concessions around at Gybro? Was that as a cash in, or was that, have we subsidized them? Yeah, out of the same account?
That's correct.
Yes. And again, it was, obviously
because that's taking up an awful lot.
It certainly is, yes. And again, when you look at that one as well, it was 20,000. They asked for more this year, and we had to come back right, and we ended up at 25, and just waiting on some financial numbers to kind of, part of it is like, where did you end up? Because council was, yeah, we hear that things have gone up, wages, cost of food, that sort of thing. So I'm working with them on that final kind of document. But there was also a commitment that we wanted to get that out for a tender, right? Just to have someone that knows, so that would be something like in 2024 onwards that we are not, that someone is trying to make a run for a business on that.
And maybe this is just my last one, maybe it's for another discussion, but the idea that definitely the Arts Council brought up that changing this structure from a grant and aid program to more like a budget item, especially for the arts. Is that something we can discuss?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, we certainly can. Right?
And even that concession stand in a way. So that kind of in my mind, doesn't really fall into like a.
So, and I think also it's one of those things that comes to council because it's an ability to provide employment for people that are either learning or, and having that support sort of thing. So I know the council was wanting to make sure that we were allowing that to continue. But yes, as far as a budget item that comes forward just for arts, yes, that's certainly something we can consider. And again, does it mean, it's a little bit, obviously there's always the balance of, okay, do you give them as a budget item X, and what dollar amount is that? And then where does it come from? Or are we increasing taxes? Because that's always the, you're either going to be reallocating from another budget, or you're going to be asking for residents.
Very much for that.
Okay, Councillor Benson, I have you up now.
My question was about the Gyro Park concession, so thank you for answering.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
It's just the information, that's all it says. We're going to receive this report for information, but the VISAC application, they wanted to increase it to 10,000. Should we make it received with changes?
A great question. Or if you want to, if someone wanted to do that, I think part of it for me is I just wanted to point out to council kind of where the dollars are at. And again, you also notice that there's a few that are pending that, I know that already with me, taking the liberty of combining the dollar amounts, but on those cash grants, that there were some other people wondering if you can't seem to pull them all of a sudden. And part of that's just been a case of some of these have been building up. I want council to be aware of, so that it's not like all of a sudden they all just showed up today.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with a lot of things, and so we're trying to, certainly, Ms. Lucchini has been pushing on me on let's get some of these things done. And so she's absolutely correct. And so that's why they kind of all landed today. We thought it would be good for council to come in and hear from the group and move on. You also notice that even on the Trail Arts Council, they also did get a request previously from council back in the spring, right, to do a cleanup and all again. So just making sure that people are aware of those line items. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll put the recommendation forward. Is there someone that wants to make that motion? That this report be received for information? Councillor Butler? Councillor Hanson, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is item 2.2, the Visek Gallery request for cash grant. Now we have, there are 3 of them here for Visek. Pardon me? Oh, sorry. The first one is for $4,000 to Visek Gallery. And do we make these motions separately?
Well, I guess depending on what council wants to do, whether you want to do one motion at the end as we sort of tally up kind of what council wants to do. I mean, we could do it that way rather than try to do them individually, if that maybe works for council.
Yeah, I would just, I would just say to increase the Visek spend of $1,019 to balance up the budget for the remainder of the year. $5,019, another request for 10. It's recognized more as a late entry.
Again, like I said,
and then I'm fine with passing them all.
Yeah.
But that's just fine.
Yeah, just so.
Okay. So Councillor Butler, do you want to make that motion then?
Sure. I
Okay.
definitely will. Just that I would request that we increase the Visek Gallery line item from $4,000 to $5,019, so that what's the fancy word in accounting?
Reconcile
with the remaining balance.
5,000.
If I'm off in my math, I'm sure we'll get. And the only reason is we're balancing the budget. So that I'm correct, and unfortunately that's a late entry.
Okay, is there someone to second that motion? Councillor Hanson? So we are accepting all of these grants that we have in front of us.
No.
We're just doing Visek Gallery right now.
Right now, what we have on the table is just an amendment, as they came and verbally spoke with us from their original request to bump it up. And again, that would be one decision on itself to do that.
Okay.
I think that it was sort of my thought process was you might be better off sort of saying, kind of listing out, here's where we want the different monies to go to, and then have one motion to get those all kind of passed at whatever dollar amount you end up at. Again, if you want to do each one individually, that totally works as well. I just was a suggestion.
So we're just going to vote right now on that one Visek increase,
Yes.
and then we'll do an overall.
That's I'm recommending that, but
Well, I guess, unless members want to have, if there's discussion on, I don't want to like not pass it because maybe we didn't agree with the number for one of the items. I'm just wondering if it's a bit more easier.
Well, again, and that may make it easier if you guys want an individual. I know sometimes that you might get down and then if you vote and you're like, hey, wait a second, this one might be less or this one might be more. That was the only thing I was thinking.
Right,
Okay. So I just thought if you at least talk about it, make a decision on what you're going to do so that you're all comfortable
Right.
and for the whole group, then probably like that.
Okay.
Probably shouldn't be for discussion on how much you want to allocate.
Okay, so we are doing the Biza Gallery request for grant, cash grant, and some motion on the table from Councillor Butler with the amendment. And we've voted on,
We voted, we just got a first and a second.
okay, thank you. And then we have the amendment of $1,019.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Carried unanimously. So we have the motion with the amendment. All those in favor of the motion with the amendment of to $5,019. Sorry, I don't have it written down in front of me.
We just voted.
Okay,
Done.
carried unanimously.
Carried.
Okay, so we're going to do these individually. Item 2.3 is the Trail and District Art Council request for cash grant. Second. Councillor Butler, you made the motion. Councillor Benson. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Generation to Generation Society, the request for. Sorry, I don't have that in front of me either. Councillor.
I'm just thinking I shouldn't vote on this one.
Oh,
Do you want me to step out or?
It would be good.
Yeah, just, I don't know.
Thanks.
Minute.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson.
Oh,
sorry.
no,
Councillor Catchall, you're moving that motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Councillor Martin, second. All those in favor? Carried, thank you.
We want to make them sweat for a while.
I know, I was just thinking that take a hike, during
What
the
about-
about to leave. Benson, Martin and myself, because we attended the,
You just pretended and,
yeah.
you're not part of the.
Okay, yeah, we're not.
It's just a presentation.
Okay, so item 2.5, Take a Hike Youth Mental Health Foundation, request.
Yep, so
Councillor Benson, Councillor Hanson,
Oh,
sorry.
nope. good.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. The Trail Curling Association, the request for a cash grant of
$10,000.
$10,000, thank you. Any, is there someone to make that motion? Councillor Butler? Seconder, please. Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And the next one, we haven't had the presentation yet, have we?
Is it just the rent?
New Basin, that's coming up now? Okay.
No, there was no presentation on this. It's a rental.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, can I have someone make that, motion, please? Councillor Hanson, Councillor Cashel, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. So our next presentation is from, the Columbia Basin Trust, and we'd like to welcome, Patrick Johnny Strelaya. Thanks for being here today.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. So even though COVID is quite a ways in the rearview mirror, it feels like this is just starting to once again become part of a normal rhythm and relationship build. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to join. We had circulated a presentation deck. To be honest, I was intending to skip over some of what is in here, hopefully not create whiplash, looking past some of the slides. But of course, happy to speak to any of the topics, but I thought we'd move past some of the historical context. I know I've had an opportunity to speak with many of you virtually coming during some orientation sessions, pardon me, after the election. But of course, I'm happy to pause at any point and go into as much or depth as you'd like and take some guidance on topics that are of the greatest interest.
That's good.
Okay. My Okay. So I just looked over to the first slide. I wasn't going to spend much time speaking to the historical context, which is really why Columbia Basin Trust exists as an organization. But in summary, our history is linked to the Columbia River Treaty. We weren't created because of the Columbia River Treaty itself, but really because of the impacts, the negative impacts around our region when the Columbia River Treaty came into effect, or more specifically, when the reservoir creating dams were constructed in Canada as a consequence of the Columbia River Treaty. And very importantly, the lack of consultation with basin residents in the 60s when this happened. Consultation meant something quite different in the 60s as compared to now. And in the 60s, it meant a lot of things like expropriation and involuntary surrender of land. So Columbia Basin Trust really came about as an idea as the region, residents of the region started to come together in the early 90s to talk about ways that this area that continues to suffer all of these negative impacts from the treaty dams could share in some of the benefit that is realized from the Columbia River Treaty. And that benefit is really money, and it is power. Every year, the province of British Columbia receives half of the power that's generated in the United States as a result of the construction of the Columbia River Treaty dams. It's a significant amount of power that is in turn sold by BC Hydro, and the proceeds of that go to the BC provincial government. In any given year, it ranges depending on the price of power, but at a low, it's in about $150 million per year. Last year, it was over $700 million. Again, that goes direct to the province of British Columbia. So the region came together and said, surely with those types of returns, there must be some mechanism so that we could share in some of those benefits. So the Columbia Basin Trust wasn't created as compensation for past wrongs, but an organization through which residents could realize some of the benefits. And the culmination of that work that was happening in the early 90s was the Columbia Basin Trust Act. Came into effect in 1995, some 28 years ago now, that created the organization that we've come to know as CBT. And alongside that, an agreement between the region and the province of British Columbia where a sum of money and rights would be endowed to Columbia Basin Trust. And there were some restrictions placed on that money. The largest portion of it, total is $321 million, but the largest portion was specifically restricted to investing in the development and construction of 3 hydroelectric facilities. Which may seem ironic. In many ways, Columbia Basin Trust was created as a result of the construction of dams, yet the region, as part of the arrangement with the province, was provided money for the development of some of those very same types of assets. Those 3 dams are what have become known as the Arrow Lakes Generating Station on the Lower Columbia, the Brilliant Expansion on the Kootenay River, which is immediately adjacent to the Brilliant Dam, and of course, familiar to many here, to everybody here, as the Waneta Expansion adjacent to Waneta Dam on the Ponder River. So that's just my summary of the history. Again, happy to answer any questions, but I think many will be familiar with the founders video that we pulled together at the time of our 25th anniversary, which was right in the middle of COVID, to really capture some of the first-hand accounts of the creation of Columbia Basin Trust. So videos where some of the founders, those that were very prominent in the early 90s, to bring this region together and negotiate with the province for the creation of Columbia Basin Trust. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I really encourage you to take a moment to do that. The region that we serve, gosh, it's about the size of Austria, about 80,000 square kilometers. And it captures all of the watersheds that drain into the Columbia River Basin north of the U.S. border. So bordered by the Haida Land to the east, really the Rocky Mountains, as they drain into the Canadian or the British Columbia portion, all the way up to the village of Valemount, which you would see at the very northern tip of that map. And that is the Kinbasket Reservoir that backs up all the way to Valemount. And then basically the Haida Land down up to the west that drains into largely the Arrow and the Kinbasket and the United States border to the south. About 170,000 residents in the region. I get a lot of questions about Columbia Basin Trust, particularly as it is today, because it can appear to be something of a complicated organization, and in many respects it is. But fundamentally, it is really no different than any other trust or a foundation or an endowment, where you have part of an organization that manages a pool of assets, investments, and it uses the return from those investments to deliver benefits to some body of beneficiaries. In the case of the trust, those assets are largely what I mentioned earlier, the hydroelectric facilities that we constructed alongside other investments. And in our case, the beneficiaries are all of you and all the other 170,000 residents of the Columbia Basin region. So it really is that simple or functional operation. I won't spend a lot of time speaking to our investments, but as I mentioned, it's not only those hydroelectric facilities that we built and continue to operate, it's investments directly in basin businesses. We have a portfolio of about $70 million investments, loans or equity investments in basin businesses. We also have a portfolio of real estate investments and seniors communities around the region, about a dozen other commercial or industrial properties that we own to generate a financial return. The pie chart gives a bit of a sense of the size of the portfolio now, and I would just note, as I mentioned earlier, the original endowment was $321 million. The value of the assets owned by the region is now, on a book value basis, well north of $2 billion. And I can say with high confidence, that is the book value. The true market value, particularly of hydroelectric facilities, is multiples higher, and I could say comfortably at least $4 billion is the actual value of those assets. Okay, well, why are those assets there? Really, it's to generate the return, to deliver benefits back to the region, tying back to our original mandate to share in some of the benefits. And how does the trust go about making decisions on how to use both financial resources and human resources when a mandate is really so broad? And the answer is we are obligated to go to basin residents to ask that very question and develop what we call a Columbia Basin Management Plan. Developing this plan or this strategy isn't a corporate imperative. It's not a moral obligation. It's actually law. It's embedded in our act, which is really novel in the BC public sector. I often joke with our board of directors and say they have the easiest job in the world because they don't get to decide what we do. Residents really do, and they have to then put into action what residents say they want to see the trust focus on. So over the 28 years we've been in existence, we've had multiple versions of this plan. Often there's no fixed time for them, but they've generally been about 5 years. And the previous plan was set to expire in 2020, and we were, of course, going to go out and speak with basin residents around what they wanted to see us focus on. And the pandemic, of course, completely undermined that goal. And instead, we went out largely virtually in 2020 and said to residents, we are at an unparalleled time in our history right now, a generational challenge. How would you like to see us do our work for the next 2 or 3 years? Nobody knew how long the pandemic was going to be with us, but we collectively acknowledged, let's develop a shorter term plan to see us through, hopefully, to the other side of this incredible health event. And that's the plan we continue to operate under today. It was set to come to an end at the end of 2023. And the slide shows what were identified as the focus areas for our work. Each year, when we bring budgets forward to our board of directors for approval, we have to tie those proposals directly to one or more of these strategic areas of focus. So support for business renewal, community well-being, ecosystem enhancement, high-speed connectivity, housing, local food production and access, all within an integrated framework of climate resilience and working with Indigenous peoples. So we require these touchstones. We can't, for example, propose, an area where it became a bit more challenging more recently, where we used to spend a lot of our resources was in recreation infrastructure. So we will continue to do that. That used to be a significant priority area, but in the shorter term plan, it wasn't. So when we bring those programs and initiatives forward, we need to be able to demonstrate to our board why it is Basin residents, or how it is Basin residents have said it's important. A few highlights from our last fiscal year. We just shared this information at our AGM in September, and there's approximately $96 million in revenue that was generated from investments. And once again, all the money that the trust generates has to come from investments. There's no taxation, there's no benefactor. It is from our investments. And out of that, there is just north of $82 million in benefits across that, again, area that I described as approximately the size of Austria. More than 2,700 individual projects that were supported in those communities, more than 60 active programs and initiatives. As I mentioned earlier, the book value of the region's assets has increased to more than $2 billion now. And I also like to include in these summaries, just to remind the importance of managing our investments. We shared the return on our investments for the past year. Our projects very strong in accordance with our projection return. Private placements are our fancy terminology for our loans and investments in basic businesses and real estate. And last year, market securities, during the period of time last year, it was a difficult year, but that negative return has long since been recovered as we move into the current fiscal year. Just a couple of comments, and we've been sharing this a bit more with residents, that the trust mandate is very large to support social, economic, and environmental initiatives across the region, and that is a wide swath of mandate and responsibility. But we do have some constraints on the work that we can do, and some of them are described here. And one that does come up often is the trust is asked to advocate for community groups or residents on different issues, and that's not a role that we play. It is really important that the trust remains apolitical. It's something that we continually have to monitor. We are created by the provincial government, but we work with all governments, no matter what the flavor, and we really focus on community. So advocacy is not part of our work. Priorities will change over time. As I mentioned, our Columbia Basin Management Plan will evolve, and it will evolve only in consultation with basin residents, but programs do change. For many years, the trust was growing very significantly year over year, particularly as we completed construction of power projects. And that meant we were always adding new programs or new initiatives, and very rarely had to make those difficult trade-offs that certainly you all appreciate around as local government elected leaders, that for everything new that you add, you oftentimes have to look at something you currently did, but have to make decisions on how resources money is allocated. That is a point that we are at right now, Columbia Basin Trust. We used to grow by 10, 15, or more % per year. It's much more modest now. It's more 3, 4% per year. So as we do more in our delivery of benefits, we often have to take a look at some of the things we've been doing for quite some time and make those difficult decisions to discontinue or change. And then finally, on this slide, also set out in our act, it specifically states that Columbia Basin Trust can't take on responsibilities that are those of other levels of government. So you wouldn't see Columbia Basin Trust funding a wastewater treatment facility, for example, or a highway development or primary care, areas that many would quite rightfully see as the responsibilities of another level of government. But we have to acknowledge that what is or is not a responsibility of another level of government is often, I'd say, value-based as opposed to fact. And this does create a gray area where we have, for example, provided funding, as I mentioned earlier, for the development of seniors communities. So independent living, assisted living, and residential care, where we invest in the real estate and lease it to a care provider. Some have argued that we have breached that incrementality line. This, for me, is an example of a bit of a gray area where, in fact, we just developed real estate and we've leased it to somebody who is a care provider. So it's something we continuously have to monitor and juggle, and oftentimes it's different, subject to different interpretations.
Mhm.
Let's share some local project examples. One thing Columbia Basin Trust needs to do a better job of in our communications is sharing what's happening at community levels. So Oftentimes, I'll present to a regional district or a table like this, and many around the table may not be fully aware of all of the activity that's happening in the community that Columbia Basin Trust has supported because it has not gone through council, or council may not have identified it as a priority area. So this is something we need to do a bit better job of, and I thought I'd just share some of the very recent examples where programs have been taken advantage of by different community organizations. There has been a lot of work happening in housing. There's been a lot of work happening in energy efficiency and upgrades for community purpose buildings or businesses, or pardon me, not-for-profit organizations with real estate that would benefit from energy efficiency upgrades. A lot of work happening with First Nations and First Nations related initiatives around the region. So I wasn't intending to speak to these in depth, but just to give a flavor of the breadth in the very recent past of programs and projects that have been supported in Trail. How we approach our delivery of benefits work, there's a number of different ways, and for many, they connect with the trust through our programs. So think something with some eligibility criteria, an application is submitted, some are approved, unfortunately some are not. Funding is provided, we move forward with the project, and the contract is ultimately closed off. That's only one way that we do our delivery benefit work in programs. There's a number of areas where we would characterize it as initiatives. So broadband is an area where in fact we've taken the lead, and in partnership with local governments and the provincial government developed a broadband network around the region. So it's not a program or a grant program per se, but an initiative. There's also a number of partnerships that we have oftentimes with the provincial government in areas like housing, wildfire work, where we alongside the provincial government collaboratively develop an approach to address an issue. And there's some other structures as well, but just to make the point, when we determine a priority and sort of try to figure out what we want to achieve, how we do it is also a big question. Not only what we want to achieve, but how best to go about doing it. And I think this is reflected in the way that the Columbia Basin Trust has historically worked with local governments and First Nations. And there's a number of different ways. Local governments are longest term delivery partner for what is now called the READY program, previously called the Community Initiatives Program. Wonderful, grassroots, group-based, resident engaged program that I think is just terrific, and we're really pleased to have it reborn, if you will, as READY and recommit to that program. Local governments have been funding recipients under various programs that the trust has available. A few are mentioned here: recreation, climate resilience initiatives, land acquisition opportunities. Local governments have also provided funding to Columbia Basin Trust, which may sound odd, but it has happened in the area of broadband, as I just mentioned, where we were pooling money from many levels of government in order to expand the broadband network around the region. And also in more technical areas where we've had to work, again, collaboratively with local government on things like statutory right-of-ways or licenses for infrastructure and high-speed, again, connectivity is referenced here. So there's a few different ways that we work together. It's not just constrained to a program, but a number of different ways that we've been able to work together ultimately to deliver benefits to residents. Staff. So when questions come up, comments, concerns, feedback, I always encourage outreach direct to me. I'm always happy to have a conversation. With me today is Patrick Cheknita, who is our community liaison. There's a map on this page. It's a little hard to see that shows Patrick's area of responsibility, and it's shown in green, if the color is coming up there. And Patrick is also an incredible resource, an individual whose sole role is to be out there working with community groups, local governments, and be an intake point or a point of clarification or an assistance to those that have questions. So certainly always feel free to speak with Patrick as well. Okay, winding up. I do want to thank the City of Trail for hosting our symposium earlier this year, beginning of June, gosh, about the dates, first week of June. It was really great. That was one of the 3 symposia around the region, very well attended. It did feel, as I started it, it did feel like a welcoming home party after everybody's been locked in because of COVID. And kind of kudos to the entire community of Trail and surrounding area. The attendance here really, really was great. And we heard positive feedback. And that was part of a broader community conversation to define a new strategic plan. As I mentioned, as COVID is in the rearview mirror and the current plan comes to an end. And that was one of 3 sessions, but there was also more than 20 community conversations. There was online discussion. There was surveys that were circulated to residents. There was one-on-one discussions throughout the region. We spoke specifically with youth. There's a number of different sessions, and all of that information has now been pulled together. And the challenge in front of our board of directors is to review, sort through that information, and ultimately arrive at a new strategic plan. Okay, and finally, some resources. I really encourage subscribing to our monthly newsletter. It provides updates on new programs, new initiatives that are launched. It shares success stories from around the region. I know I've heard from a number of different elected leaders that they were able to advance their own community work as they learned of what was happening in some other part of the region. So I really encourage subscribing to that. Of course, our website. I mentioned earlier our founders video that was developed alongside our 25-year anniversary. We also have a book that captures the story of the creation and first 25 years of Columbia Basin Trust. Like everybody else, we got our suite of socials there. If you're on any of those, to keep up to date on the work that we are doing. Okay, I know I spoke quick, but the intent really was to try to come back to specific questions or conversations. Happy to respond, or just they don't know the answer to, so they take it away.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson.
Just wondering, as the current strategic plan ends in a month, what is the timeline on your new strat plan coming out? So then as things come forward, looking at how things can align with where we can partner and work together on things.
Yeah, no, great question. I should have touched on that. So it's in front of our board of directors as we speak. Here we are at the end of November. I want to believe that we will have an approved plan very early in 2024. I don't want to speak too much for them or make commitments, but everyone collectively understands that we need to communicate out the direction we're going to be going very soon. So we don't have a specific date, but I could say early 2024 is the collective commitment to the trust.
And then can that be sent out to us once it's or access? So that way then as we're developing our strategic plans and goals, if there's anything that aligns, we can figure out how to partner on things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it will be we want to have it as a succinct document that speaks at a high level that you could drill down into. And yes, the idea is to have a very wide distribution of that plan.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for the symposium in June. I attended it. It was a really great time and I learned a lot. And I was just wondering, were there similar themes out of the other symposia that in Cranbrook and where was the other one? Golden. Were there similar themes to the what came out of Trail?
Yeah, I think there was. I think it's fair to say there was no real surprises in what we heard, and if there were surprises, shame on us for not being connected. But I would say there's relative degrees of emphasis. I think everywhere we go, housing is a significant issue that faces everybody, and that I think is probably the most prominent theme. We hear a lot about social issues and issues most vulnerable are facing in communities, climate, and the changing climate, and how we could most effectively adapt to a changing climate was a very prominent theme. So I could list a few others, and it was all of those with varying degrees of emphasis.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. No, that was great. That was very interesting. I too enjoyed this symposia. It was so much fun just meeting everybody. And like you said, especially after coming out of COVID, I think that was our first big opportunity to be together with everybody. All the other communities and councils, and yeah, no, it was really, really great. And you do that every 2 or 3 years?
I certainly hope so. We want to get back to that type of rhythm, probably every 3 years or so, or as circumstances call for it. In the past, we've had one big event in the region. I don't know that that does it anymore. The travel required to attend is just too much. So I think it'll become part of our typical MO to have multiple.
And I also was looking at your pie chart there. I was kind of hoping we could open up that piece of housing a little bit more, make it a bigger slice of the pie. I see that's not going to happen this time around.
Well, I will say this without going, being a little bit careful in terms of some confidentiality and still some decision to happen, but it'll be no surprise. I can say this comfortably, housing is going to be a significant priority for us on the other side here. And commitments that we're seeing out of both the federal and provincial government are significant. And one of the themes that we consistently hear from those governments is we've got some money, but how do we get that money actually at work in communities? And that takes often pre-development work, identifying needs and demand. What kind of housing do we actually need? Some feasibility work, project development work. There's a real partnership role there for the trust to provide seed money to get that work done, and then get the bigger dollars in from other levels of government. That is something that I fully expect to see as a focus.
Councillor
Yeah, I appreciate the symposium as well. Nice to meet Patrick there and develop this kind of a relationship. And appreciate you guys coming here today. I met one of your colleagues, and his name it's escaped me, but she's a housing manager for what was her name again? Uli. Yeah, she was great to connect with as well. So I guess for me going forward, it would be exciting to see Trail tap into some of this funding locally. I know you have resources that you've allocated for Trail, which I commend you on, and I believe also at the Roslyn Yards.
Correct.
You're part of that. So we see your work here locally. So for me, to speak for our constituents, it would be really nice to come up with some grant applications that will see Trail, see some of those same benefits. So I'm really looking forward to working with that relationship, getting to know Uli on a better basis to tap into some of those funds.
Certainly, if you're aware of projects or groups that are developing projects, or we love to talk to them about what their ideas are and make sure that they're grounded and potentially feasible, and then taking it to the next step, providing that support.
Thank you.
Uli's an architect. So
yeah, I mean, it was just great to connect. Patrick and the symposium. And your presentation was stellar.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, thank you for coming again today.
One last plug on being able to go down to the market and have the event down there was actually my personal highlight. Despite some rain, there's some rain at the tail end, but that was really great to see people in that too, not just sitting around in the
that was great.
That
was really well planned.
Thankfully, I missed the rain by half an hour.
And the food truck outside.
Yeah, those were great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again to you. Thank you. Bye, Patrick. Okay, on to item number 4. The 2024 utility fund budget. Then passes on to CAO. Sure, please.
I'll just wait for Ms. Lucchini and I'll share my screen. For me, we talked last meeting. I think that we could take away from that meeting is that I think that we obviously our yard waste, it's not really a difficult one, I think, for council. We're bringing that forward. Bringing that forward today for a decision. One of the reasons why it's separate from the rest is that we have to work with our software provider who helps us put items onto the actual bills. And so having more time to deal with the yard waste credit, which is a bit of an anomaly. That's why we're bringing that forward. But what I have here for you today is just sort of a couple of things, similar document that we had last time, although I made sure the titles were correct on this. So figured out that mistake. But just more than anything, I think that probably council is very comfortable with what's happening in the sewer fund, the sewer utility. It's pretty healthy increases and not too significant. Water is the one that we've got some challenges with. And I am cautious too, just because I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm not trying to create a panic on like what's happening. But when I look at where we have an operational challenge, and the reason we have operational challenges is different than some of the other communities, is that we don't have like a Roslyn or a Nelson where the water comes right out of the mountain and then kind of gets filtered and then sort of goes from there, because it tends to be pretty pure once it's coming out of the mountains. We pump out of the Columbia, and then once we pump that out of the Columbia, then we've got to do the treatment to it, and we've got to distribute it. Of course, yes, we do have Bear Creek well as well, but for both Roslyn and for a Nelson, there's enough where what reservoir sits is just one reservoir. Instead of here, where now you get it down, and yes, you get it across, but a lot of times we have to pump it up to other locations to be able to bring it back down. And so we have a lot of reservoirs. So we've got a lot more capital involved. And just also noting that our water treatment plant will be 30 years old, which actually is in some sense is pretty young. But we know that over 30 years that things need to be replaced, need to be upgraded. So we know some of those costs are coming. So I just thought I'd pull together just two things. One is that I'll share my screen with kind of what we got on the document. Let's see here. Sure. Okay, so just sort of an update for the 27th here today. I didn't change this screen because I know the council goes directly. I'm hoping that we'll get that direction so that when we come to the December 11th meeting, that our forward what it is council wants to approve for the 2024 rates. I just left that slide as it is. But the next slide that I put in related to just some discussion points on water. And it kind of comes in play with the updated spreadsheet or an option spreadsheet that I provided you. It has the letter C on it. The other two were A and B, but this is now C. So let's try to help out being a bit different. And fully aware that we don't have all of the information available. When I say that, meaning we haven't had a water master plan update for quite a while. We have been working on it. It will be something that we will get in 2024. So we know that as much as I give you numbers, because we know some of the major projects or what we need to do in 2024. You had Mr. Spears here speaking to the fact that we have some work that's been mandated by the province to get done at the water treatment plant. Again, there's pretty big dollars in there. And we also know that the work that we are going to be doing for the retaining wall work, the water component of that, and that you've seen prices escalate on that. And we know that those are things that are right now in place. We talked about them last year. We're going out for tender. We've got this Class A estimates, and so we want to push forward with that for 2020, 2024. In 2025, we have some lesser requests in there, but we have started to kind of place in kind of like a $2 million a year, which I think is more of that capital amount that I believe you're going to require. Now, part of that will, in my opinion, or hopefully, be spelled out when we get that water master plan. The thought process that may be more, but I'm thinking that's something that we're going to need to be able to tackle some of the infrastructure that we need to. When we also, by last time we saw the maps, we could see that there's some work, good work that's been done, but there are a lot of our community has pipes that have been in the ground from the 50s. And again, we had another water break today, and 17 in the year so far. We still got a month to go. So it's one of the challenges is that sometimes if you're not making the investment, then you're kind of making the investment through repairs and maintenance. And so if you can get on top of some of these things and get these problem pipe areas, there tends to sometimes be sections of communities that were done at a certain time. Depending on what kind of pipe they use, you can find out, well, actually something that was built even later had better quality metal than something that was built newer. And we need to tackle those areas because we've got leakage, or we're having multiple breaks, or we're having to bring our staff out, and that's expensive. Obviously, trying to be proactive is way better than getting the phone call like, hey, there's water bubbling into my street or whatnot, and we need to come and repair that and have the team out there for later tonight. And so again, too, I've got a kind of a placeholder to give you that. Obviously, in my spreadsheet, I have inflation. So inflation, you can see now. Again, the question will be, as we work through these, is my inflation rate too high? And we try to go out, 15 years sort of thing. So is that the correct number? In the same boat, will investment income stay the same? Well, those are sorts of assumptions that we have inside the spreadsheet. The question that for me is that, well, maybe we can't afford 2 million, but maybe 1.5 is going to be the number we're going to have to kind of settle with if depending on where the dollars are at. The one thing that we do know is that one of the priority components that we're looking at right now is the upgrade of the Charles Lake line, which comes right from the water plant itself all the way down into town, 2.2 kilometers. We're looking at that around $4 million. So again, that's where some of that 2 million is kind of looking at. Would be a project that we probably wouldn't get done in 1 year, but those are the sorts of numbers that you look at and say, okay, 2 million is not an out of the question kind of investment when we've got that. So what I kind of did here is that I looked at some of the things that we had talked about before, and I just realized that I didn't put something in the right line. But under 2024, I added, what if we reallocated 650,000 from the general surplus into the water fund? That was one thing that I looked at. One thing I also forgot to discuss with council and get your kind of direction on is that if you look under row 20, you'll see the Community Works Fund grant. So in light of all that we are trying to accomplish and to make this somewhat balanced, I want to make sure the council is aware of it, was planning on using our Community Works Fund again this year to go into that. The one thing that it does is that it goes, okay, well, yes, that's great because that's what the money's for. It's to upgrade water, upgrade sewer, upgrade all of these things. But it does mean that there's no money for any of the capital works projects. And so that's where it's all being put into the water system. But that seems to be the place, if anything that I'm looking at needs most love. So that's why I have put it in there over time. And then the other component there was that I said, well, what happens if, because on that previous sheet, you could see that I think that by 2020, if you look back at the previous one, which would have been B from the last time we met, in 2026, we were already in deficit, right? And then it started to grow. And I said, well, what happens if we borrow $10 million and say, if we borrow 10 million in 2026 and then pay that back over 30 years, based on the rate that MFA is proposing over that time frame, and again, one never knows because 30 years is a long time. They kind of allow the first 10 to be locked in, and then you have to do 5-year increments after that. But their website is saying that they're putting in at 4.79% interest rate, which is not like really bad, right? I mean, overall. But you can see that $10 million, you're paying $14.9 million in interest over 30 years. So it's and it actually only gets us basically to 2033 before we're back into deficit. Now, part of that's because, as you can see down below, the annual payment at 30 years is $665,000. Now, that will be under row 61. You'll know it's higher in a couple of years because we in 26, 27, and 28 because we still have some outstanding debt that we're working through. But once we get to 2029, that debt will be gone. We want to see that ongoing for 30 years. You would be paying $665,000. When I backed it into 20 years, it was almost $900,000 in interest and principal payments to kind of pay that amount off over a shorter period of time. Again, I bring this just to your attention because yes, we've got a 5-year plan, but it's just sort of this year is sort of where we're focusing on. Saying yes to kind of what I'm showing you doesn't mean that we're blowing $10 million. It doesn't mean that we're committed to $2 million every year forever. But I think I'm just trying to provide council with best as I can what your expectation is to get the water utility into a place that is going to be sustaining itself. And like I said before, whether or not it's like we have to borrow a little bit to maybe get Charles Lake done, and it's not as much, maybe it's only 2 million, and then have some smaller amounts as we look through the water master plan into the future, that may make this more sustainable. But what I can tell you is that the operational costs of the water treatment plant, as compared to the amount of revenue that we're collecting, we are not going to be able to meet that goal. And that's also including the fact that we're adding $400,000 a year out of the capital works fund to try to ease the pain on what we need to get rates up for water. We're not the only community as well that's really struggling. Certainly I know that Roslyn, because we work with them closely, and they had also brought forward their last couple of years points, their asset management plan saying that they need to replace $3.5 million, sort of what their numbers come in for getting their infrastructure up to a standard. And so that's again a smaller community, and trying to also make sure that their assets are in a place that get improved. Now, like as I mentioned before, certainly the newer products that we're using for water, they are lasting a lot longer. So again, those are some of those investments that you're making now, but should allow for your residents of the future having a much longer period of time before needing to have them replaced. The I guess other comment I would say is that we couldn't look at increasing the tax contribution. Now, the one thing about water is that it is our businesses and our residents that are paying into that, which makes sense. If you have some tax contribution coming in, then you've got more parties at the table kind of providing revenue towards more revenue is being collected from a larger group of people on taxation than it is just for the water service, because it's basically your water service fee. But that's a place which can also be something that we could look at in trying to assist. As we discussed last time, we do have sort of that flat parcel tax of 150 in the water that's been there for a long time. And tax contribution is another way of doing it, just to be, so it says, well, what's the difference? Well, the parcel tax is you've got everyone paying the same amount on the parcel. So that would be how many parcels you own, you pay for that flat fee. The tax contribution, again, is one of those places where whenever we figure out what our taxes are going to be, that is then pushed out to all of the community members. And it also tends, because that creates the mill rate, which then applies to your home based on your value, or your the different classes that we have, whether it's residential, business, non-for-profit, heavy industry, those sorts of things. They all become part of what we collect on taxation. So it's a bit different. Everyone kind of fills out for that. Now again, you're obviously going to have different properties are going to have this, but it's kind of a set fee where if your assessed value is $2 million, then you're going to be paying more towards the system than someone that's got the average home at $388,000. The one thing that I thought was interesting, and I appreciated your comments, Councillor Hanson, just about like what's happening with taxes or what we're seeing. So we did get a preliminary numbers from BC Assessment, and it looks like, and again, it's not done yet, so it's still early days. They try to give us a heads up on what's new construction. We've had some new construction, not a lot, but the one piece that I thought was interesting is that it looks like housing assessed value is down about 2% over the year before. I don't know if that rings true with what you see, Councillor Hanson. But one that I did notice is that the heavy industry is actually the assessed value has gone up 10%, which is interesting. Now, again, what that means here is that we always adjust the multiplier to make sure that the sharing ratio, so that we don't have in the same way that residential has gone up 50% in the last couple of years, that it doesn't take on 50% of the taxes. We always adjust at the city. We always adjust the multiplier to make sure the sharing ratio stays relatively the same. Now, what has been happening is that places like the school taxes, RDKB taxes, hospital taxes, they do not change that multiplier. So we have really seen a significant shifting of those taxes from those entities being put onto residential, because residential properties assessed values of trail have gone up significantly over the last little while. That type of an increase on a heavy industry will mean that part of that will swing in 2024 as far as what comes out of RDKB's asks for taxes. And so that's just something, again, for us to talk about as we move forward. I know that last year's ask was there, and I don't, not trying to hide it from people. Last year we asked for 10, council ended up 8.5. I mean, at the end of the day, it's council needs to be comfortable that they're going to be able to talk to their community members who are going to call them. We didn't get too many calls. I mean, council probably got more calls than I did. But again, going forward, I am saying 10. We've got some 10s into the future here if we need to get the funding up to a point that's going to allow for us to be able to cover the capital cost after the operating is taken care of. The next slide here, I just popped up because I was working with our partners and talking with them, and I wanted to, it's not easy to try to compare apples to apples. So reasons why: City of Trail, City of Nelson, they're both on flat fee. So the City of Roslyn, City of Castlegar, they're on meters. And so that makes it a bit different for them to be able to compare, because now we're saying, well, here's what our average usage is of cubic meters of water, and apply that. So again, the benefit of the meters is user pays, right? The challenge with the meters is it costs a lot of capital money to put in the into the meters, which then you now have to charge people more money in your rate to be able to collect it. And on top of that, then usually you've got to do billings either monthly, quarterly, and so now you're hiring staff to read the meters, to have another staff member there to send out the bills and collect it. So but it does have one of those correlations between the having people be accountable for water. One thing I also noticed was kind of interesting is that both the City of Trail and the City of Roslyn have a water tax charge, plus tax of $150, right? So I thought that was interesting. And as an aside, that was just water, and you can kind of see where the two groups, or I think all the groups, kind of sit. And then if you move down into the sewer, you'll see that sewer rate for us appears quite a bit lower. Now it is because we, again, as I talked about, we're only responsible for the transmission lines. There's a pretty fantastic partnership that goes on. The fact that Roslyn comes down to Warfield and Warfield to Trail, and then Trail goes out to a plant, and then we've been able to get a good grant to be able to fund that. But what sometimes can be a hidden component of this is because if you're looking at City of Castlegar or the City of Nelson, they're responsible not only on that transmission of the product, but also the treatment of the product before it's released. So they've got their own wastewater treatment plants, and that'll be why their costs that's quite a bit higher. And it's like, well, actually, it's not really, because ours is being handled through an RDKB charge, which you wouldn't see necessarily unless someone was to say, what are the unit rates that RDKB charges for all of the different services that I pay in one lump sum for taxes for RDKB? And this is why I tried to pull it out. Obviously, the same rate that applies to all that are in service. So that's why I can put in a number for Roslyn based on their average assessed value home, which is about $550,000 compared to Trail, which is $388,000. But you can see where on those assessed values where you get that swing on an RDKB sewer charge has one rate for all participants. City of Trail's paying a little bit less than what's happening in City of Roslyn. But again, trying to, as much as I can, make sure you're trying to compare, because someone might say, well, hey, their rate's really much higher. It's like, yeah, on City of Trail and City of Nelson, but that's not taking into account like what's happening with these other fees that we pay through the RDKB. And again, when I look at the numbers overall, we're not far off of, what's happening at a City of Nelson or Roslyn as far as our water and sewer fees sort of thing. City of Castlegar, in looking at their data, the individual, the CFO has been away, so I make sure that I got my numbers correct. But I just show that again, because I know that when we discuss these things, you're going to need to have some answers to those commonly asked questions about what's happening. And someone might say, well, we're not the City of Roslyn, we're not. And I get that. But the part of it too is that if you saw everyone else in our region was way lower than we are, then you would have, you could be able to say, well, hey, wait a second, why is that? And again, for me, the only things was on this one was making sure that the title was correct for these. These are the ones that were in the previous slides. And, so I would open that up to council, because I would, if I can, I would like to get some direction as far as what we want to do for 2024.
Okay. Mr. Benson. So looking at the slide, the comparison and with the total utility charge of 1059, would from that be subtracted the garbage credit from?
So
is that all in the, yes. I know it's like a separate thing,
okay, yeah,
because there's no more garbage in the utility, right. But would that be subtracted from?
So what I try to do here, Council Benson, is make sure we're just looking at water and sewer utilities, trying to completely remove the waste garbage utility portion from any of these conversations.
Okay. And then last year you provided us with a couple of options, so that if we weren't comfortable with like the 10%, we could see what a difference it would be with the. I was wondering if that's something we could do again this year, because that was really helpful.
I certainly can. And again, I can even do it right now on the screen, sort of thing. So if you're wondering, like, what does the dollar amount change, kind of thing? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I like that. Did everyone like that last year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot, but
Okay,
I feel like you liked it.
Well, this is the beauty of this, is that I only have to change it in one spot.
Right.
You can kind of see the progress, right? So here is that spreadsheet that you have in front of you physically, and I know you will review that. but if you're saying to me, for example, is there a number that council kind of says, hey, what happens if we increase by X, and what is the effect? What is there a number? 8, okay. So again, after discount, the change would be similar to what last year's was. You would go up, the change would be $32. So I guess basically on that math, you could say that every 1% is about 4.5 or $4.50. Yeah.
I was comfortable with like a 7.
Okay. Okay, so now you're at $28. So again, not far off of that. We're a bit dollar change.
That would be a difference of 27.77 this year versus our increase of 31.49, which was some
in last year.
Acceptable last year.
Yeah.
So theoretically, we should actually have a 31.49. Would be mine.
I don't think you should go below 8.5. But that's what we were last year, 8.5%.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to go lower than that, because that's been my position.
And then the other question I have is the community
works fund. Yes.
Is there a way that well, okay, I guess you could just speak to a little bit in this, not the work part, but the one-time community.
Well, the 2.9 million.
Yes.
The
community fund was announced.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How that, if there's a way that we could work some of that into this budget. or unless you had that earmarked for some.
I hadn't, I just,
planting nutrients.
well, I mean, exactly. I mean, it is one of the challenges, Councilor Butler. It's a fair question, of having some of those funds and saying, hey, you know, what if we did that in the current year? Yes, you would allow. Just hadn't had the discussion yet on, what could be potentially, other aspects.
Even to earmark it as one of your ways of avoiding the 2026.
Right.
Line there.
Right. But you will see that even when we changed, that right now we're at 7%, you can see that the reserve balance drops, you know, down to 242 in 2025 compared to where we were at 10, like at 360, and then obviously the effect goes out. And when you see the effect of some of those things, it's when, for me, if I go out to the furthest number, we're now at $8.688 million deficit in 2038, which again sounds crazy, but that's what that compounding effect of not having some of the higher increases now, how it benefits you later. So dropping that 3% doesn't sound like a lot. It's, you know, around $12 difference for a home, so $1 a month. But based on these numbers, you will actually, if they need to say this, like, you would actually almost, you would be down $1.6 million. And that's the kind of effect that those compound. Again, it's not for, I know that we're trying to figure out what's taking into consideration what's happening fishery wise for our community overall, and what the increases are. And again, sometimes you look at, well, is it 8? Should it be 8 and, you know, ongoing instead of, you know, 10s for a few years and then 5s? I mean, these are all kind of conversational pieces that we can have happen. All I can tell you is that this is one of those documents that you really see the effect of compounding. You know, we talk about it all the time in banking. We talk about it all the time in, you know, investments and those sorts of things. If you can invest and have a you know, a return on from your dividend, 8% or 5%, what that does compounding is really quite fascinating. So,
and then my last question would be on the community works grant.
Yes.
Which is also known, it's the old gas tax revenue.
That is correct. That is correct.
So is there projections for it? Because the last tables I saw only went until 2024.
Right.
You're at like 415 or 414 or something.
Yes, and great question.
So, and is there a projection that it will continue throughout, like you have it on here?
Well, I mean, and that's, I guess right now they're negotiating with the federal government right now on the new, what the new amount is. So I don't have those numbers, but I'm not expecting it's going down. If anything, I'm hoping it's, you know, like we said, going up a little bit, as you said, even that $15,000 will make a difference, right? But yeah, no, great. No, these are great questions. Yeah.
Okay. So it is anticipated.
Yes, but I will tell you that in our last provincial finance meeting, is part of the feds negotiating with the province is that they want a lot more accountability on what are you doing with the funds and how are you tackling your asset management. We got an asset management grant and we're working on that right now with our vendor to get us a more thorough plan, which I think will come into play. I don't know if it'll be done in time for kind of capital budgeting for 2024 when we get there, but it certainly will be for the following year. Okay.
Can I see what 9.64, if there's a proposed reduction to sewer rate from last year based on what you've got here, rate history?
Yes.
Can we see what that difference is? Adding that onto our current.
Okay, so
I was I think so I was looking at what the sewer rates were from 2023. So
right.
5.5% change from the previous year.
Right.
To what the kind of proposed for this year is. That's a 1.2%.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. I see.
Change.
Yeah, you're saying, okay. So right now with me putting in, and I'm always working off the after the discount, because what we find is that basically 80% of people take care of it. That's not so as much as you can, you know, so there's no sense saying, oh, the rate's this when people basically come in and pay that. Not everyone, but most people. So the difference is $10 for, and can you see it on the screen there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at 4%, and because that's what I'm saying, the sewer, and that was part of as well, trying to address last year, you were willing to go with 5, and that was $13. This year we're looking at 4% for sewer, so that's $10. So you're not quite, but $3 difference lower than kind of what we had proposed in the sewer utility. And again, sewer utility, lot healthier as far as, what work that we're trying to do and again, I am quite confident that when we start seeing the RDKB sewer amounts, that's also going to be reflected. I know that, they got a huge grant, it's great, but the cost of construction of what the plant that they want, going to put a lot of pressure, I think, on them being to be inside the budget. Councillor Hanson, was that something?
Well, I
did that
just
answer your
was
question?
thinking, like the difference, right, that we've seen between these years, the amount of changes.
Yep.
I mean, and what did we, this last year, we increased our rates for sewer by how much comparatively?
So what I was looking at
I'm just looking at the differences between them, like if we're not increasing sewer as much.
Yes.
Can we use maybe that difference
Well,
from
and
what we had
that's
proposed into water?
correct, and you got it.
Offsetting that.
You got it. So that was part of when I looked at the numbers and I said, okay, how do we help our residents out? It's like if you're at 4%, you get a $10 increase on your sewer utility, and if we're on 10%, then that helps us comparatively as compared to last year at 8.5 and 5. You were at 32 and 13, so basically we were at 40. 40. The difference, I guess, would have been 32 and 14 would have been 46. Right. So as this year with water, so we're at $10 there, and if we're 10%, then we're what's there? Not that much different over what kind of last year's increase. And that's sort of on that first slide in line.
Right, so it's a similar increase, just disproportionate.
Well, it would be about $4 more, right? So then that's where if you were at 9, you would be kind of even to what last year's was in water, that is. The silence is deafening, and yet I appreciate that.
And we are expecting taxes to hopefully go down.
Well, I wouldn't,
except for the multiplier is going to have to shift.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the tax is going down. What I would say is that
the
assessments going up means that the city residential portion of RDKB taxes, I believe, is going to shift. Like I said, they have taken on more of that burden over the last couple of years because of assessed value. The fact that right now, and again, always remembering that.
Sorry. There you go. Should be fine.
We just discussed before, like, does everybody's got the ability to appeal what assessed value they get as well. But just letting you know that the numbers I was seeing is that there was about a 10% increase in what the assessed value of some of our larger industries. Yeah.
We also have to take into consideration that 600 and some odd thousand that was not paid for in taxes last year that are going to be put back on.
Yes. Yeah, and that numbers have all been that's all been calculated. Yeah. And so that will become part of that taxes component when we get to taxes. Yeah, but you're correct. Yes. Yeah, and that may be one of those things that helps sort of in 2024, the fact that yes, all people will have that amount to be collected is a tax holiday, but that should probably be offset slightly with the fact of the reallocation of whatever new taxes are coming from RDKB, because I can imagine they too will be feeling pressure, whether it's for wages and for cost of construction on the different projects and services that were with the RDKB. And there's two just kind of in that beginning stages of their budget. So,
I mean, we've had 2 water line breaks in 4 days. Fifth Ave on the weekend or Friday, then one today.
Apparently, yeah, I didn't. Yeah, that's what.
And I mean, when it's in nighttime, I mean, it's cost exponentially more to repair than to plan for diligent replacements.
It does, Councilor Allison, but let's be clear. Adding this amount here doesn't mean that next year we've got a all of a sudden, hey, we don't have any breaks. It is just about trying to renew that infrastructure. That infrastructure, like I said, has been in there since the 1950s. A lot of the old ones, those we saw the charts. So that's a good 70, 74 years that some of that stuff's been in the ground. So we shouldn't be surprised that some of it's happening. And we do start to see changes in the weather when we start getting some cold snaps. That is sort of what also, it tends to be a direct correlation with having pipes break or burst. So kind of that late fallish winter.
So I guess my question would be, if we didn't allocate the community works to the water utility.
Yeah.
Which is what it's meant for, right?
It can be used on many things. I'm saying to you that I was trying to, it's always good to use it. That's one of the things that the province and feds are looking at, is that some of these places have huge amounts of community works funds sitting on the books, and it's like, well, you're supposed to spend that. Let's get some of these things done. Certainly in a place.
This isn't a way that we can demonstrate that we are utilizing.
You got it.
Right?
Right?
Yes. So we're not.
And again, if you wanted to see kind of what the effect is if we didn't use it, if that's one of the questions, because certainly we can do some math on that. And also, like I said, had just as an option, not but I was suggesting, and I put it in the wrong spot there in the borrowing, but allocating $650,000 on that latest C from our own surplus, right, to try to shore up the budget for us going forward for the next couple of years until we kind of figure out what happens from the water master fund. Yes, if we do not have that $400,000, and it's only budgeted, and every year council makes a decision on that's what they want to do with the funds. I just have earmarked it there quickly.
And have we traditionally always included it in our?
We have not.
No.
Council had used a big chunk of it and been sitting there for about our lights.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's not all bound. Originally, and this is one of the reasons why we were starting to see it starting to grow, was that they were very restrictive on what you could use it for. It's like cleaner air, and then they've opened it up to, okay, you've got a pathway that you want to take, or you've got recreation, or you've got climate resiliency. So really allowed for much more use, which has been effective on people being able to tap into those funds.
Yeah.
And, now, again, of course, one of the challenges from these is that when you use those grants, then sometimes don't let you get another grant because now your grants and things like that. So.
It makes sense to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have quite a bit because it is. I mean, like when it was being used as projects came up and looking like that, it was a bit hard to pin down, and also a bit like flavor of the day. Where this is demonstrated it's going to water infrastructure, which was clearly one of the things.
It was the main reason, like there's cleaner air and cleaner water, so works. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I guess maybe for one, it seems that council seems to be comfortable at least with the sewer rate increase of 3%. That seems to be something that is palatable. Yes, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I've got one at least, and again, I know this is not easy. It wasn't easy last year. I'm hoping at least now, though, again, we're having conversations. If you want me to do more work and come back, I don't want to completely rush people on these sorts of things. I mean, I can run these things multiple ways. I just know at the end of it, you do less now, it's just going to cost more later, right? And that's one of the challenges that you see. Yeah.
Well, maybe if we could ask you to go back and look at that one, and maybe even update that one line item to 414 to reflect the
I could again do it right now. Yeah.
Sorry, what line number?
He's talking about so
it's 414.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's minimal, but
Council Butler is just pointing out that the expectations is this to increase, so it's a wise thing.
Because you only do have one more meeting before you're in.
Yes, and, but again, I'm here to serve council, so if you're wanting, more chances of it, that we can certainly do that. And I do realize, like, once we get out 1, 2, 3 years, right, we don't know, it's one of those things.
Well, I was actually adding my own age up to the end there.
So just, it's interesting, so, adding that 14,000 over the kind of the 14 years, it drops that deficit in, which is in column AB, from 7.18 million to 6.97 million.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's fascinating that, it's a little bit, but it's.
So then to Councilor Benson's request, that 7,
Right.
where does that leave us? Way up there, then.
Yep.
7, that's what.
Well, that was what I was saying, it almost drops us 1.2.
So, and then putting that at 400 in where for the next year,
Pardon me?
or putting the 414 in for next year.
414.
Oh, because
Yeah.
right now it's 400.
I believe it's supposed to be 414 in 2024 as well. Don't count, don't touch. Count one.
Don't count them yet, not till they hatch.
That's it.
Council Butler.
Yeah, this was at 7 or 7.5? This is 7. Okay.
So that puts us at $8.45 million deficit, compared to the 7.187. So, you're still at, yes, $1.2 billion. So it's there.
That's sort of a comment.
That's 7.
The other thing too is we can talk, perhaps not this year, but next year, how to work with the money or not.
Jeff, the project, yes?
What are those, the finding communities fund?
Yep.
That's how it's finding looking for.
But I'm not the only, it's not. I just think times are really tough right now on our constituents, and I'd rather see maybe an increase next year or the year after when things are hopefully settled a bit more. That's just where I'm, my personal view. I'm just one vote.
Well, I know this might seem like a small amount, but what if you went in there with 7.5? Like sort of went between the, to have a look at that and see what the numbers are at, because I agree with Bev, although we have to be really aware of what we're doing here. I think, we also have to remember that we have old infrastructure that we, need to make sure that we're looking at too. And good to be proactive. Yeah. Let's see what that looks like.
And again, too, when I show you this last fall, I know that it's out a number of years. It just, again, it's just, for me, it's about if you increase now, right? And so again, you can see that puts it at 8.2. So you're $1 million, right? That's what the compounding effect is over that relatively short period of time. But just yeah. And at 7.5, then you've got basically $10 for your 31 kind of thing.
Mhm.
About $4.
Mhm.
Change from last year, increase from last
Yeah,
year.
yes, and that's after discount.
Yeah. After discount.
Yes.
After
yes.
this. Well, I mean, that's a little bit.
Mhm.
Did you want to make the decision to move on?
Well, again, I would like the direction, because if council's
Yeah.
okay with it, then
Yeah.
we can come on the 11th with that, and then we would probably have a meeting, say on the 13th and 14th to pass both of them, and then you kind of Christmas, we wouldn't have to be coming back in January to kind of do the big.
You need a motion.
I could use a motion.
So I'll make a motion that we move forward with, it was the last number, 7.5
7.5.
and 3.85.
It was 4, actually.
Four. Well, I just am going by what it says on the sheet right here. Yeah.
Oh, that's the difference in the proposed change.
It's a 4% increase.
4%.
Yeah. Okay.
So is there a seconder for that motion, Councilor Butler? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously.
And unfortunately, I'll be back next year with some,
I've got 14.
some more questions or more increases. But thank you for your time. And like I said, the other part that I think will be extremely valuable is getting that water master plan, so that we've got some professional engineering work that's going to tell us something.
Absolutely.
And then where to allocate things. Now, when we have grant funding opportunities from other groups, when we do, bigger projects such as Greenwich,
Mhm.
right? There was some funds. So is that the CBT funds?
Yes.
Was that the 600? No, was that, where did they contribute to that with that project?
So they would have contributed more on the operating side. Because they
Okay.
don't, again, we kind of talked about.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, we don't kind of help out with those, but what we want to do is make walking path, the above ground amenities kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's where they come in with their portion of the coverage.
Right.
And the one challenge with these is that unless you're coming up with something, and I kind of mentioned before, whether or not it was to, and it's something maybe we should consider, and I haven't asked about it, but if Charles Lake is coming down with that size of pipe, how much head is that when it's coming down the hill? Because that's a, you can go and say, hey, is there a possibility to invest in having some, power generator from it, right? And so that's, again, I don't know if anyone's looked at that. Sometimes we get kind of always focused, but those are the places where someone might say, hey, we'll give you a grant. Again, sometimes it's, you pay for the grant. If you don't get the grant, it doesn't make sense economically, but if you get something to have you a grant for it, then all of a sudden you're able to have something go back into the grid. Now, again, when I say some of these things, I was used to, my other municipality, they own utilities. So when you're doing things like that, it was easy to go, oh, hey, here it's like, hey, we got power, but I know that we're going to need more power. We're trying to do EVs. We've got to have all those things. So it's not like it's going away. But again, that might be something for us to be looking into. That's that. If you got something like that, that's where you tend to find, oh, hey, we'll give you a grant for that. It's like, oh, you've got pipes in the ground since the 50s, and you guys haven't really, been able to get those. Yeah, we're not. They don't tend to be grant funding on those.
So before can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilor Martin, Councilor Butler, all those in favor? Thank you.